do you have a business plan about the different activities that you're going to be doing in the month of April, the month ahead, in your business development activities? If you don't, well, that's not great. It's not going to be clear for you yourself about what you're going to be doing. But then if you're a partner or a managing partner, if your team doesn't have plans or expectations for the months ahead, then they're not going to do them, are they? And so I think that's the first problem, that there is a definite lack of delegation and leadership at senior levels in law firms and legal practices regarding business development and the expectations to be doing things. Let's be honest, a lot of partners are not doing business development themselves, let alone expecting their teams to be doing it. And then this morning, I was doing my morning run. So every morning I get up early and I try to make a good habit and do my 20 kilometers. Well, not 20, 10, usually 10, 20 at the weekends. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this is really such a pity. This is really such a tragedy that you have partners and managing partners. They should be looking after their team. They should be ensuring that their lawyers reach personal eminence and grow their brands and get well known on the market. And if you're not helping them to get there, then what are you actually doing as a leader? Again, this is something which I can say to you because we're a limited audience. Although we might be a limited audience just now, there will be a few thousand other views within a few days on YouTube. So I can say this. And I was thinking, wow, this is really pretty terrible. It is not good leadership if you're a partner or a managing partner and you're just delegating the legal work and correcting the memoranda. You know, you should be really helping the lawyer to understand that they have to do something. They have to carve out their niche. And a very silly way to do this would be to follow the 20th century approach, where you're going to spend the next 10 or 20 years very slowly building your personal brand by random people coming to your practice and passive referrals, people recommending people. Yes, that's fine if you want to wait 20 years, and then you'll have lots of gray hair and maybe you'll be kind of famous. But it's a very inefficient, very slow, very haphazard approach to take. You could reach this kind of success within 2 or 3 years and a lot of money and be able to control the direction of your travel. So I think I can be a little bit critical towards our partners and our managing partners. Guys, what are you doing? You really need to take care of your lawyers. It's not a burden or an encumbrance or an unreasonable expectation to want your lawyers to become well known in their area and to have this kind of personal eminence. I think it's rather negligent just to let them do the legal work and let them live under this kind of bubble delusion that they can do legal stuff and the clients are not complaining and the invoices are being paid and everything is fine. That's really pretty bad. That's pretty catastrophic. So this topic is looking about cross-selling and business development in general, but we're going to take a slightly different angle, examining this from a sales management and a delegation kind of perspective. So if you are a partner or a managing partner, a senior partner, if you have a team, then this is going to be useful for you about how can you actually give these tasks to your lawyers? How can you communicate it? How can you be sure that it's understood? And how can you then get the work back, give the feedback, and keep people on the right track? Part of your job as a partner or a managing partner isn't simply to try and do everything all by yourself. You cannot possibly do a crazy number of billable hours and on top of that manage a practice and at the same time do all of the business development. You're going to make yourself sick. You're going to make yourself kind of crazy doing that. Actually, that's exactly what I saw happening Okay, I mustn't mention the name of the firm, because if I'm going to criticize a law firm, then I should be polite and maybe not sued either. But I was working in one large international firm for a number of years, and that's what happened. The partners were expected to be doing everything. They had a ridiculous number of billable hours. They had crazy sales targets and revenue targets, and they were meant to manage the team and do the business development. So it meant that, yes, they did have to work 6 days a week, sometimes more. And They did have ridiculously impressive salaries. But I don't think they had any life quality, and I think it's going to end up killing you. And I mean that literally. You know, you can drop dead from a heart attack if you try and overstress yourself doing the same kind of stuff that you're doing at 25. You do that when you're over 40, it can end badly. So delegation and the ability to give tasks to your lawyers, not just the legal work, but especially the business development work. I think this is absolutely critical. And for our youngsters who are watching, for our young lawyers, first of all, you should learn these skills now, because I'll whisper you a secret. Lawyers are generally really bad at delegation. So it's good for you to know this stuff now, so that as you get older and more experienced in your career, you're going to be able to delegate not just legal work, but also business development tasks too. Don't follow the example of your partners and your managing partners just now, because they might not know how to be doing it either. So you need to learn this stuff. And a lot of it you can even put into practice now. There is horizontal delegation. There is different ways that you can have reverse delegation. You need to understand these different models, so that if someone is doing something with you and you're a youngster and they're messing it up, then you can identify that and you can clarify and you can put them in the right direction. So this is useful for everybody. So today we have the 16 key concepts as normal. Each of the 16 key concepts, they come with their associated pictogram. I'm just thinking, there's one wonderful group of very nice lawyers that I was working with the week before last in Serbia, in Belgrade. I shouldn't mention the name of the firm because I didn't get permission to do that. But I'm thinking, guys, because we talked about a number of these topics, if you already know it, just ask some further questions, ask some deeper questions in the Q&A function in the chat box below. I've written actually 3 different textbooks on this topic, and this is just the very first one. So if you wanted to go further and deeper, we could do this for a number of hours. Actually, usually this training would be 4 hours. And so 4 times 3, that's 12 hours. So there's more than enough concepts and content to go even deeper. So if you think you know something and it's obvious, just ask a deeper question. Okay. So when we take a step back, let's imagine you're a busy partner. I would be saying that if you're a busy partner, and let's set unreasonable expectations, because I can be unreasonable. I can set much higher expectations that are existing in your jurisdiction, because a lot of the jurisdictions are not at an ideal place when it comes to business development best practices. So if you were a partner, I would be saying, okay, let's imagine half of your time would be billable hours and half of your time should be business development. Yes, it should. So not just 1 or 2 hours per day or per week whenever you have time. That's absolutely wrong approach to take. You need to be much more engaged in business development for the success of your practice and your company. So let's say about half of your time is business development, half of your time is billable hours. Now, the typical mistake would be that you're trying to do everything yourself. And this is the life model for lawyers and partners that has succeeded in getting you where you want to be in your career. So you were a clever kid, you did good work at school, and good for you. Then you went to high school and you did the same thing. And then you went to university and you studied very hard and diligently for your exams. And you do that, and you got a good degree. You went to a legal company, and you work very hard and diligently individually, and you get promoted. And this is the kind of model that you've been doing for the last 10, 20 or more years. A lot of individual hard work and diligent endeavor, and you get results and you get promoted and you see the reward. This means that quite often lawyers might not be team players and they might be lone wolves. And your model of success has been your own individual approach to doing work, and you're smart and you're disciplined and you get to where you're going to go. This model of success isn't going to work when you get to partner level. And as you proceed as being a partner, there's just going to be too much work, too many things to do. If you find yourself stressed out that you're crossing one thing off your to-do list and then you're adding on another 2, then it means you're doing something wrong. It means you're not managing your team. You're not delegating. I'm going to look at this more from the perspective of business development delegation and sales management, but all of this also applies when you're delegating legal tasks and memoranda as well. Now, I would say one of the main things to understand is that there are different degrees of delegation. Again, let me be horribly critical. If you are not delegating anything at all, that's bad. You got to start. I mean, in business development, how many tasks have you delegated this week or this month for your team to do in order to make the team not just better known in terms of eminence, in terms of marketing, because you know that I'm not very keen on marketing. I'm much more keen on sales. But a direct question, have you delegated any tasks to people in your team so that they are going to be getting meetings? That's the main metric of success that I'm looking for in sales and business development, meetings. If you delegate a task to one of your lawyers, write an article, they'll write an article, probably. It might take them days or weeks. That article disappears into cyberspace and nothing happens. I'm not impressed with that. If they were going to do something with that article, send that article some current clients, ex-clients to get meetings, then that would be good. That would be business development and that would be sales. Now, what you need to understand is there are different degrees of delegation in sales management. So if it's something relatively simple, you can have a low degree, a very high degree of delegation. You ask someone to write an article because such and such a law has changed. You set a deadline. You set the expectation of how big that article should be. You make it clear that just writing that article isn't enough, and that the creation of that article is going to be to recontact companies X, Y, and Z, especially in such and such an industry. So that's our objective. We're doing that article not just for the purpose of marketing and eminence. That's an easy way out. We're doing that to generate meetings. The lawyer that you're delegating this to, they know the topic and they're motivated. You can have a high degree of delegation. On the other hand, perhaps you will see that they're not that motivated. So then you're going to need to motivate and enthuse them. This is part of your job. It really surprises me how often partners don't get it, that part of their job is to motivate and enthuse, to find the selling point, to do internal selling for tasks that are delegated. You're not in the army. You can't just tell someone, do this, and it's going to be done. You do need to motivate and inspire them. So if someone has low will, you're going to have to motivate them. If someone has low skill, you're going to have to train them or guide them. So we can see that there are different degrees of delegation, which means on one extreme, you can simply delegate. You can give the task and then you get it back and it's fine. You have a very hands-off approach. On the other extreme, you realize that you're going to need to be much more hands-on. You're going to really need to direct. You're going to touch base more often. You're going to look at the different milestones that are achieved. So a typical mistake, the first mistake that happens with lawyers in sales delegation or any delegation is they don't do it. The second approach is that they only have one manner of delegation, which usually falls into the two extremes, either absolute delegation, which begins to look a little bit like abdication, where you abandon something and you never check it's done. And then the opposite is micromanagement and puppeteering. That's not good either. You need to choose the degree of delegation that you're going to do, and that will impact how much hands-on approach you're going to have. Now, while I would very strongly recommend that you need to delegate more business development tasks, such as cross-selling, if you're a partner or a managing partner, you can see the clients, you can see the client list. Why don't you tell this lawyer should take this lawyer to lunch with that client? This other lawyer should take that other lawyer to another lunch with a client. You could be delegating this, just tell them to do it. Believe me, a lot of lawyers are not going to take the initiative to do this themselves, not because they're apathetic or disenchanted, but because the focus and the priority is on billable hours. So where's your sales leadership? Where's your management? You should be telling people, these are strategic clients. We've done an ABC analysis. We know that these are A clients. I'm the boss. I want you to go and take this client to lunch, and I want you to introduce this other guy. This can also be another approach to overcoming possession mentality and cross-selling. You're the boss, you're the managing partner, tell them to do it. It's not their client. Look at the contract, look at the memoranda. This is the work product of the company. So you need to be a little bit more hands-on. And if you're not making cross-selling happen, then it's not going to happen. However, so that's my first criticism. You really need to be delegating more cross-selling because you're probably not delegating it at all. Do it. It'll take you 10 minutes, it'll take you 20 minutes, make a list of clients, make a list of client managers from the lawyers, make a list of other lawyers that would be interesting to meet. And then for the month ahead, tell them, do it, go, have lunch, take the credit card, put it on the company account, have some fun. This doesn't need to be terrible. On the simplest level, remember, like I was telling you, they don't actually have to sell anything. To be honest, if your lawyers are probably doing zero when it comes to cross-selling, and you're probably delegating zero as well, then just making this happen, just having them having a social engagement, a social lunch or a dinner with the client would be a good thing, and it would result in some mandates. However, there are things which are called shockers. A shocker is something which, if you are a partner, you cannot delegate. If you're a managing partner, you cannot delegate it. And if you are a lawyer, you mustn't receive it. You mustn't agree to do it. So in business development, there might be certain events or activities where the big fish have to hang out with the big fish. So if there's going to be an invitation to an event, that might have to come from the partner or the managing partner themselves because of status. If there is a very strategic client which has significant ramifications or potential conflict if we work with them, then if there's something which is really too important, too risky, that's a shocker. It shouldn't be delegated. It has to be done at a high level. If there is a dispute or a disagreement, you can't throw a youngster in there to deal with it because they just won't have a clue what they're doing and they'll mess it up. So there are certain activities in business development which unfortunately you cannot delegate. I'm thinking of a lot of the high-level sales. So if we again look at the sales and marketing spectrum, we know that I'm recommending that you should be doing the activities at the top of the spectrum. In general, I don't want you to really be doing marketing because I think you can delegate the marketing. But now, if you're a partner or a managing partner and you're doing sales management and delegation, the very, very top of the spectrum, the top quarter, the top third, I think there's going to be quite a few shockers there that you can't really delegate. So, for example, warm calls to strategic clients, to CEOs, you have to do that. Anything about pricing and upselling, I think you would have to do that. Some speaking positions and representing the company, you have to do that. So what I mean to say is that conflicts, disciplinary matters, feedback, there are some items in sales management which you cannot delegate, but there are quite a lot of items that you can. All of marketing, you can delegate it. In fact, you probably shouldn't even be delegating that to lawyers. You should be delegating that to marketing and PR people to help you with. You should be delegating different sales tasks to lawyers, and cross-selling would definitely be a very, very big one of them. Now, this is going to sound soft and fluffy, maybe a little bit silly. Like I mentioned that you are not in the army. Sometimes I got asked, especially in Eastern Europe, whether we should give thanks to a lawyer when they have done something. So you wanted this lawyer to go on a tea for three with the other lawyer and the current client. So you delegated that. And because you're a good partner, you explained to them, okay, so this is the client and we've done a spectrum analysis. So remember that from the previous broadcast. A spectrum analysis means we've got a nice one-page summary of that client, looking at them in the 7 different parameters of the relationship. And we know that it's very important not just to leverage the social equity, but also to have something to offer. So while we have this wonderful relationship, existing relationship in corporate, I want you to bring along our good lawyer, Susan. She's an IP specialist, and you guys have got to work out what could be a product or solution that Susan could actually offer. So you get them involved. The first lawyer can think about this based on their knowledge of the client. The second lawyer can brainstorm and suggest some different IP solutions. They work it out and then they do it. And oh my goodness, what a surprise. It actually worked. They managed to get a lunch. I think it's quite unlikely that you would fail. If you try and do a cross-sell T for 3 with a current client and you've done your research and you have good relationship and the client is happy with your work and the other lawyer that you're going to offer to meet has something interesting to offer, I would be expecting that you would have over a 50% chance of success. Very rough rule of thumb. So let's imagine the 2 lawyers, Susan and the other one, they come running back to the office later that day. They're very happy. They had a nice meeting. It was relaxed. It was social. Maybe they got a mandate. Maybe they didn't. Actually doesn't matter. The main thing is that they did it. Should the partner say thanks to them? Absolutely. Of course. Of course. If you're going to be delegating a task, you have to give thanks. You have to show appreciation. You have to show that what has been done is valued. It's not enough for you to simply delegate something and then take it. And then the only time that the lawyer hears back from you is when you're going to complain about something. No, you do need to give that recognition and you need to give thanks. I'm remembering back at DLA Piper, when I was working in St. Petersburg, there was one partner, they would delegate to me a task. This wasn't even business development. This was me to read their memorandum and edit it for English, which I hated doing. It's really, I don't like editing. It's very boring, but I did it. And they would always say thanks. And I would be pleased. Okay, that's nice. At least I built some good social equity with the partner. And then there was another partner, and he wasn't actually a very nice chap. He would never say thanks. I think he was extremely arrogant. Now let's imagine it's a Friday evening, just coming up for 6 o'clock. If the first partner delegated the task for me to read that memorandum, which wasn't even my job, which took a lot of time and which I hated, I would do it because I felt valued and appreciated. So I would do it. I would stay to the office until 7 or 8 and I would do it. And then I would have my weekend. If the other partner delegated that task, there's no way in hell that I would do it. Oops, I didn't see that email, and I would leave and I would go and have my weekend. I'll do this on Monday. So is it childish? Is it irresponsible? Probably. But is that human nature? Absolutely. I'm not going to do something for somebody if I don't feel valued or appreciated. So this social equity, this emotional intelligence is extremely important. Do give thanks and show appreciation when something is returned to you. And of course, we're going to look at this further. You need to give some feedback as well. If you really want to inspire or motivate the lawyers and your colleagues in doing the different tasks and doing this kind of cross-sell that you delegate to them, explain to them this is our journey. Show them the bigger picture. We are here at A and we're heading here to B. Tell the lawyer, why are you asking them to go and have lunch with Susan, the IP lawyer, and our current client? Why is this a good idea? Now, if we're going to be kind of American style and we just have sales targets, and the reason to do this is do it or you get fired, do it because we have sales targets, do it because we want to make more money, we want to make the board of directors even wealthier, that's not going to inspire or motivate people very much. So you need to look at this in terms of the journey. What is the journey of our department and our practice? What are we actually doing? What's the bigger picture? If you can show the lawyer, and you should be telling them this, it isn't simply taking Susan, the IP lawyer, on a lunch with a client in order to sell more IP work. It's because this is a strategic client and they're in an emerging industry. And we understand the importance of IP and the difficulties they're going to get with AI on the horizon. And we want to become the law firm which is dominant in this sector to help our lawyers become the most preeminent AI, IP, IT, tech, ICT lawyers on the market with these cutting edge companies. And it's really exciting. And we need to get closer to the CEOs and the directors to understand the wonderful opportunities that are coming up ahead for us. You tie the interest of the individual lawyer into the interest of that activity, the T for 3, and you're tying it into our journey. What is the narrative? Where are we going? Again, let me be awfully critical. this is extremely rare. Most law firms have no journey. They have, or maybe they do, but they're not telling anyone about it. They have no journey. They have no narrative. They have no massive, overarching, ambitious plan that they're heading towards. Or if they do, maybe only the partners know about it and they're not telling the lawyers. So that's a little bit silly. Show the journey, create that aspiration, create that motivation, show that leadership. And that will make your chances that the cross-selling works actually happens. If people understand what they're doing, then they're going to be more likely to want to do it. People will be more happy building a wall brick by brick if they understand it's not just a wall that they're building a cathedral. They're heading to the stars. So I think that's quite important. And a problem here, this also connects to an issue that lawyers can face, especially in business development. It's about believing in yourself. Now, this is quite remarkable because I'm thinking of one litigation lawyer, and she's absolutely marvelous. She's a wonderful litigation lawyer here in the Czech Republic. And she can go to court and she can make her arguments and she can persuade clients. She's a very strong litigator, very, very talented, very confident. But then if we ask her to go to a networking event, to meet with new people, she becomes very timid and afraid, and she's not sure what to say, and she doesn't have the security. I wouldn't say that her reluctance is actually sales phobia. It isn't that she's disengaged and that she has sales phobia, and it's not that she doesn't understand it's necessary. I don't think she has confidence in herself. She doesn't believe that she can do this stuff. So if you ask the lawyer to take Susan for a lunch with a client, then Susan might start saying silly things, which can be very annoying if you're a partner. Susan might be starting to say, oh, but I mean, this is such a big client, and I don't think they want to do trademark registration and or IP work, and I'm not sure if I understand enough about the patent work that I could help them with, and copyright doesn't create a lot of money. And she's already talking herself down. You need to encourage the lawyer to believe in themselves. Okay, but like Susan, you did this work, you did these good things, you helped that client, remember? You could do recycling, Susan, remember? You wrote that memoranda, you answered these problems. These could be interesting things that you could actually talk about to the client. Believe in yourself, Susan. So again, just between you and me and a few thousand future viewers on YouTube, this is going to be part of your job in delegation of cross-selling. Your lawyer might not be that enthusiastic because they don't see the purpose. They don't understand our journey, where we're going. That's why they don't want to do the cross-sell. Or on the other hand, it might not be that they're anti-sales and sales phobic. It's just that they don't have confidence. So again, that would be part of your job as a partner. And you can do this as a lawyer, as a horizontal, as someone else to help them. Okay, let's brainstorm, let's think, what can we offer? Because if you can answer that question, if you can have some passion and excitement about what you can offer to a client, then it's going to give you some confidence, and you can get quite into it and enjoy the conversation that you have with the client. So you've delegated the cross-selling task. You've helped the lawyers to understand why we're doing this. You've shown them the bigger picture, the journey that we're taking, and you've encouraged them to believe in themselves. You've motivated, you've inspired them, you've helped them to show, these are some of the value propositions that you can offer. These are the good things that you can do. And they go off, they have the meeting, and you give thanks to them. And then you have to give feedback. Now, feedback is absolutely critical in any kind of delegation, whether it's you're in sales management, you're delegating a business development task, or if it's just a legal task. A typical mistake in law firms is that there is no feedback. Again, I'm being very blunt here, so please do drop into the chat function or the Q&A if you disagree with me, because I'm making some pretty big assumptions and I'm provoking you a little bit. I'm exaggerating this to wind you up to some degree. But generally, I see that the main problem is there is no feedback afterwards. So the lawyer goes to the cross-sell meeting, you've helped them, they define the UVPs, they took Susan, and then they come and they tell you how it went. And let's imagine you were busy, so you only managed to speak to these guys a week later, and you were saying, hey, remember there was that cross-sell meeting I asked you to do with Susan, how did it go? And they say, oh, we had a nice time, we were talking, and it's a good client, and then we left. I would be asking, okay, did you do any follow-up afterwards? Did you pitch them something? Did you suggest something? What's the next step? What was your CTA? So I would be asking these kind of probing questions. And then you begin to realize that they didn't do some things because they didn't think about it. Or you realize that one of the lawyers says, well, Susan says to you, yeah, and they were quite interested in this IP dispute that they potentially might have. So I need to get back to them about that. And you're thinking, and you say, but Susan, this was a week ago. Yeah, and Susan's been very busy with her billable hours. That's very bad. You should be doing feedback. You should be doing the follow-up within 24 hours of that meeting. So if Susan has just left it for a week, she's probably lost the sale. So here it's extremely important that you give positive and negative feedback. Now, when you're giving the feedback, you need to give it in a timely manner. In this scenario, you've messed up because you've waited a week to give feedback. If you're going to give feedback on the task that was delegated, you should also be doing it probably within 24 to 48 hours while everything is still fresh in mind. And it's not enough to say, good job, wonderful, how good you are, Susan. No, you need to explain to her what is the actions that she did, what was the behavior she exhibited, what was the impact of that? Yeah. So you need to make it very clear and tangible. You did this, and this was the perceived impact. You did that, and that was the perceived impact. And if you want to make it conditional, you would then say, and if you do this, there could be this potential impact. We talked about this before. It's called the SBI model, situation, behavior, impact. You could say, Susan, last Thursday, when you went to that cross-sell meeting with the client and the other lawyer, that's the situation, you took very good notes about the IP dispute, and you realized that this is something that we could really help them well with, especially since it's almost identical to another one that we did in the industry. That's the impact. That's the situation. That's the behavior. However, you haven't followed up, and it's been a week now. So my prediction is there's a good chance we lost that sale. Situation, behavior, impact. Now, Susan could disagree about the situation. She could disagree about the behavior. She might disagree about the impact, but it makes it very tangible. You haven't simply said, Susan, you're so slow. You know, then she could be, that's a kind of subjective agreement, and she could disagree with you. So you can use the SBI model for positive or negative feedback. And if you want to make it more sophisticated, you can add if, and then another behavior impact at the end of it. Susan, last week when you had the cross-sell meeting with our A client and the other lawyer, you took very good notes and realized that there was a good opportunity to help them since we had a similar dispute. However, you didn't reach back to them in the last week, which means there's a good chance that we've lost that sale. If in future you follow the 24-48 rule recommended by James, the famous legal salesperson, then there's a good chance we'll get these engagements much quicker and add further value to the client. So do SBI or SBI-BI for feedback. If that's complicated, write to me, jjmcveigh@nicodonia.com. I can share a paper with you about it. I've got some different ideas. On the other hand, if you don't do any feedback at all, that's not a degree of delegation. That would be delegation abdication. This means you just go back to sleep and you forget about it. That is not delegation. You cannot be so laissez-faire with the giving of the tasks that you never check that it was done, you never find out how it went, and you don't give feedback, and you don't measure the results. So if you're a good partner, a good managing partner, maybe in this month, you had delegated to your team 10 T for 3. 10 different lawyers are going to introduce 10 other lawyers to existing clients. Very simple task to be done, let's say in the month. But then you need to check the results. I would be very curious about the results. I bet that if you actually did that, you just had 10 of your lawyers do T for 3 meetings with 10 of the other lawyers, with 10 of the existing clients. It would be remarkable if that didn't generate some revenues for you, some mandates and some engagements. And the eminence and the publicity and the goodwill and the relations would increase dramatically. Your client retention would increase. The chance of future cross-sell would increase. Your client loyalty would increase. Very simple task. But you need to then check what were the results. How many meetings came from it? What is the feedback? How can we do this better next time? Let's imagine from these 10 cross-sells, you resulted in 3 mandates. That's entirely possible. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's then look at the conversion ratio for next time so that we can try and move from 10 cross-sell meetings to getting 5 of them resulting in mandates. Probably we need to better research our clients. Probably we need to do a better spectrum analysis, and probably your value propositions need a bit of work. However, delegation abdication, where you don't even check that that has been done, that's no longer delegation. You need to lead by example. You need to carry the torch. You need to lead the way. If you are a managing partner or a partner and you want your lawyers, the 10 lawyers, to really do these 10 cross-sell meetings, how many cross-sell meetings have you done? Set an example. People are more likely to follow what you do rather than what you say. So get your own house in order. Now, let me be direct again. Let me be brutal and blunt to our partners or managing partners who are watching. How many T for 3 did you achieve in March? Now it's the 23rd of March, 2023. It's been 3 weeks this month. If you have done 0 T for 3, 0 face-to-face meetings with one of your clients and introducing one of the other lawyers or partners, that's not cool. That's really not cool. I would imagine that if you're at partner or managing partner level, it isn't ideal that you haven't done a single cross-sell meeting, a single T for 3 in the previous month. So it's good that we're not talking about this tete-a-tete or in front of the lawyers, but that would be something to improve. You've got to make this into a good habit. And then you publicize it, your internal marketing. You make sure your lawyers know, yes, I went to lunch with this client. Yes, I had a dinner with this client. You should be doing your business development meeting. You really should. At least, if not once a week, if that's too much, at least once a month. And as a partner or a managing partner, you set by example, you carry the torch and lead the way. A very simple business development activity that you should be doing is cross-selling. And it means you should be doing T for 3. You should be introducing the different lawyers and the partners to your existing clients. And let's not be snobby, involve the youngsters. If you have some young kid and he's 25 or she's 25, just fresh from law school, 1 or 2 years of experience, they don't know very much. They might know something, they might know something interesting in NFTs or crypto or AI or biotech, they might have some cool ideas. It's totally fine to introduce some of the youngsters to existing clients. That would be more like work shadowing. Maybe we're not expecting that's going to result in a mandate, but it is good exposure for the younger lawyer to see what's happening, that you're taking them seriously. And it also shows to the client that you're not just a bunch of old, serious, conservative lawyers, that you're embracing the new generation. You've got these fresh ideas. You have that initiative and the drive. So it's a good idea. Carry the torch and lead the way, set by example. I'm just realizing that I'm doing my famous monologue, that it's already 15:15 and I'm still talking. Again, this is up to you. If you have any questions or comments, put them into the chat function. I'm happy to chat with you. I can even unmute you if you want to speak. That's totally fine. But if you don't, I'll just talk. I don't have an interview for today. We do have an interview next week. So yeah, throw in some questions or thoughts if you want me to stop doing my monologue. Now, comprehension checking is extremely important when you're going to delegate a business development task. So you think this is obvious and it's easy. You want this lawyer to take Susan to meet the current A client to do a T for 3. and you have an idea of an exact value proposition that you think would be very good for them to pitch and to present in a war story, in a soft sell to that client. So you're telling them about it. At the end, you need to check that what you have delegated has been understood. This is called a comprehension check. The very worst thing that you can ask, and this is exactly what I see partners and managing partners doing all over the world, is, do you understand? So, Susan, do you understand? Is that clear, Susan? Do you get me? That's a very silly thing to ask, because first, maybe she doesn't understand and she's embarrassed and she doesn't want to say that she doesn't understand, so that you don't think that she wasn't paying attention or that she's stupid. So people might not understand, but they don't want to tell you that, especially if it's in front of other lawyers. Secondly, maybe she thinks she understands. She thinks she got the right idea, but she didn't. She's wrong. So she'll say, yes, I understood. So simply asking somebody, do you understand? Is that clear? And so on, it doesn't work. You need to do a different type of comprehension check. The best way is to get them to re-summarize back to you what you said. So you could say to them, okay, Susan, tell me what I just told you. Susan reads it back to you, and if she's wrong, then you correct her. However, Susan might get a little bit offended or upset by you saying that. It sounds like you don't think she's very smart. It's a little bit rude. So what you could say to her would be something like this. This is a very British way to do it, very self-deprecatory. You would say, Susan, I'm a little bit stressed today, and perhaps I'm not communicating as well as I could. Could you run that past me again about what I want you guys to do for that T for 3? That would really be great, because I'm not sure I expressed everything correctly. So Susan tells you what you had asked her to do, and she messes it up terribly. In this case, she doesn't lose face. And you say, oh, no. Sorry, Susan. I do apologize. My mistake. What I had meant to say was this. So what can we take from this? You need to do comprehension checking after you've delegated something. Doesn't matter if it's a legal task or a business development task. That's the first thing. You cannot ask, do you understand? Or is that clear? You cannot ask, do you have any questions? She might have some questions, still doesn't mean she understood you. So the only way to be sure that something has been understood is for them to repeat it back to you. And in order to not offend someone by reading it back to you, you do self-deprecation. You say, perhaps I didn't explain it very well. Run it by me again just to see if I covered everything I had wanted to tell you. Yeah, so that's the idea. I was speaking with some of my wonderful German lawyers in Frankfurt, in AC Tischendorf. I was telling them about this a few weeks ago, and they were saying to me, James, this is very bizarre. I think we can be a little bit more direct with each other. If we started doing the self-deprecation, people are going to think you're very strange. So again, you take this how you would prefer. What's the better way for you to do it? Now, there are different ways you can delegate a task. If you have a very large task, you would use a larger delegation model. If you have a smaller, simpler task, you use a smaller delegation model. So larger and smaller are two different ways that you can delegate tasks. So let's imagine it's a simple cross-sell. I think this would be a smaller kind of task. So you set the expectations. You manage the colleagues, so you agree upon who is going to do this. You agree that they can do it, that they have time and capability. So that means you get the buy-in. So as the partner, you ask them, hey, do you have time? Can you do a T for 3? Yeah, then you lead them through the process, you explain it to them, and you let go, and you let them go off and do it. Afterwards, the last two stages, you enter into the feedback and you receive the news which had been done. So you go through the different stages. You communicate it, you delegate it, you release them, And the last two stages are the same, which are that you receive the news, you explain it, and you receive the feedback, and you do that with them. The same thing with larger. The last two stages are always the same, in the same way that at the end of delegation, we always give thanks, whether it's a larger or smaller task. We always explain what had been done, and we then give the feedback on them, and we release the colleagues. With the larger tasks, however, you're going to need to lead them through it step by step, because there's going to be different milestones. You need to agree on the budget and the resources and the materials and the participation of the different colleagues. And you're going to need to recap at each of the different stages. So it's not enough that you do a self-deprecation comprehension check. You're going to need to do several recaps over the milestone of the period of the larger task. A larger task would be if you haven't simply delegated a single T for 3 to Susan, you would use this under smaller delegation, but you have done an entire cross-sell campaign, you're a managing partner, and you have delegated to one of the partners to do, and they have to then sub-delegate that to 10 lawyers. So there are two different models that you can approach. You need to approach it with a larger model for larger tasks, which is a little bit more complicated and takes more time, and a smaller model for smaller, simpler tasks. This is one of the disadvantages of doing training by Zoom or by Teams, that I have another paper. I have like a 5-page paper about the delegation models of larger and smaller, which can be used for single Ts for 3 or for entire cross-sell campaigns, and how to communicate that and how to do it. It's quite a few pages and you can read through it. That's probably not going to be enough. What you actually need to do would be the exercises. So if we were going to do this as a face-to-face training in your jurisdiction, I would probably spend at least a couple of hours on role play, where we'd be delegating different tasks, larger tasks and smaller tasks, all of the elements from the very start of the conversation to the end, to the comprehension checking, to the feedback, to the thanks, and so on. So what can I say here? You have a limitation when it comes to reading about sales management and delegation models, and you need to actually put them into practice. Yeah, I think that's what we can take from that. And a very common mistake to avoid would be a thing called puppeteering. We've already seen that one extreme of sales management is abdication. If you just say, hey, Susan, go and have lunch with that client sometime with the other lawyer, and you forget about it, Susan forgets about it, or maybe she doesn't, maybe she even does it. That's delegation abdication. That's not very good at all. The opposite extreme is more common, actually. This is called puppeteering. This is when you go beyond the 5 degrees of delegation to actually not letting them do it. In the larger model, you do have to step out. And in the smaller model, you have to step out. That's 2 of the stages in delegation. One of the issues that I see, again, this is very common in Central and more in Eastern Europe. So Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, Moldova, Romania, is that some partners, some managing partners, they don't know how to delegate. They don't know management because they're lawyers and they never studied management, and they don't know sales management, and they end up puppeteering. They don't let the lawyer do the task. They're controlling it. They're micromanaging it. That isn't delegation, and that's very frustrating. That's really awful. The problem is that when you're dealing with lawyers in the legal industry, lawyers are usually pretty smart, and lawyers are usually lone wolves. You know, lawyers, they've reached their success through a lot of individual effort. And so generally lawyers are going to hate being puppeteered or micromanaged. So this is going to be extremely demotivational, massively ineffective. And in fact, the funny thing is, while I criticize too much. I criticize lawyers, I criticize partners. While I criticize partners and managing partners of generally not having good delegation skills and having room for improvement in delegating, cross-selling especially, I notice that when they do it wrong and they start doing puppeteering, it ends up taking their own time, and it takes the time of the lawyer. In this case, it would even be just quicker and simpler if the partner did it themselves. So be very careful with puppeteering. Delegation abdication is very bad in sales management. Puppeteering is even worse. You got to take your hands off. You got to let them make mistakes. You got to then give them feedback. That's the unfortunate thing about delegation. I think this is also why partners generally and lawyers, we don't like to delegate. It's a nuisance. It takes time to explain the task to do, and everyone is slow. And then you need to give them feedback, and then they make more mistakes, and you need to give them more feedback, and then you have to control them, and you have to motivate them. Yeah, it's a nuisance, but if you don't do this, in the long term, you're going to end up trying to do everything yourself. So it's slow at the beginning, but you have to do it for the long-term commercial success. If you were a super smart partner, a super smart managing partner, you might have 90% of your business development tasks being delegated to your lawyers. You might have a wonderful pipeline of nice meetings happening for your practice, not from you, but from your lawyers and from your team. And you, as the partner, the managing partner, you would be dealing with the very high level, the executive, the super duper whining and dining level. You wouldn't be wasting your time speaking to the CEO of some startup who doesn't have any money and isn't going to be a good client. So the secret of success as a managing partner is going to be sales management and delegation, so that your team are getting the meetings, not just you yourself. And a typical mistake that I see in sales management and delegation from partners especially is, I call it the Nike mistake. Just do it. So I'm very busy. I'm running to a meeting. Susan, go and have lunch with that client and the other lawyer. Just do it. So it's inefficient communication. And then we're surprised when everything goes horribly wrong. For us, it's obvious, and we're frustrated and we're stressed, and we think these lawyers are just ridiculously slow and stupid and lazy, and we're in a very bad mood. And we just say, just do it. And don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. It's very cliche from television. It's not going to work. That's a Nike mistake. You have to spend the time to go to the person, speak to them, to do all of that procedure, to comprehension check. So being in a rush is going to mess it up. Don't do that. And when you're delegating a task, my advice would be this cross-sell. You have to get out of your office. You have to walk down the corridor. You have to meet Susan. You have to chat with her, ask her how she's doing, build the social chemistry. Remember the example of those two partners from DLA Piper, one of them who never said thanks and the other one who always said thanks. Sometimes the partner who said thanks to me, he would ask me, hey, James, how are you doing? How was your weekend? So we would build that kind of chemistry. My advice in sales management, if you're going to be delegating a cross-sell task, like any other type of task, do both. You go to Susan, you speak to her, you build a little small talk, you then communicate the task that's to be done, you comprehension check it, you can see her will and her skill, you give her thanks that she's agreed, then you go back, then you send a little summary email, 2 sentences clarifying what's been done. You put it into your business development diary, because if you're going to be a partner like me, you're very often going to forget what you delegated. So that's another mistake. So you put it in your business development diary, some things that you have delegated, and the deadline. Of course, you set a deadline, and then that's it. And then you check when the deadline is due. So in terms of delegation, it's not enough to just speak to someone and give them the cross-sell task to do. It's definitely not enough to do this managed by email. I see that happening a lot in some of the large international law firms. Again, I won't mention names. Delegation by email is not a good idea. Do both. Tell and then write. And remember, there will be a motivational slope. I mustn't get started here and start, being a little bit pessimistic about motivation for lawyers to do business development, but there will be a motivational slope. Maybe Susan doesn't realize how important it is for her to become known among current clients. Maybe Susan doesn't realize that she's in an industry, in a business, and that there is a pipeline of work, and that if we don't have enough IP work, we're going to have to fire her. Maybe Susan doesn't get this idea. So there can be a motivational slope for Susan that she doesn't consider this lunch or this tea for two part of her job. She's a lawyer. You give her legal work and she'll do the legal work. And she's a good lawyer and she's ranked in chambers. Well, good for you, Susan. If you don't have work, you're going to be a poor lawyer. So you need to anticipate there can be a motivational slope. And if you are a partner or a managing partner, you're going to need to, this is so tiresome, I know, but you're going to need to motivate and inspire. You're going to need to show them our journey. You're going to need to carry the torch and lead the way, to set by example. You're going to need to anticipate that there will be this slope which people need to go up. Sometimes the angle of the slope is such, don't know if you can see my pen, the angle of the slope is such that it becomes a wall. And I encounter this so many times, and I have to be polite because I don't want to upset people. But, you know, you ask Susan, so how was the meeting? She says, oh, I didn't have time. I'll do it next week. And next week you ask her, how was it? Oh, the client is busy. And you can see she doesn't give a damn. She's not motivated. She's not engaged. The motivational slope is at such an angle for her. Do what you like. It's going to be like banging your head against the wall. My advice would be try, and then in the end, give up. If a lawyer doesn't get it, if they're going to be so apathetic, so disengaged, the motivational slope is so high, then you can't help them. Fortunately, in my experience, this would be 1 in 10. 1 in 10 lawyers are never going to become commercially successful or do business development because their motivational slope is too high. So don't waste your time with them. You can try, but in the end, it won't work. Most lawyers, they have different degree of motivational slope. You can help them. You can help them find their path, and they'll get there. I'm not sure if this is too cynical to say. Try and inspire them by making the world a better place. You know, not just the bigger picture. What is the idealistic solution that we're having? I'm working with some different lawyers in ESG and environmental, and it's so fun. They really love it. They're creating their decarbonization strategies for energy producers. They're looking at circular economy. This one with ESG and environmental, you can motivate. We're not simply writing a memorandum. You know, we're saving the purity of the air and the cleanliness of our river and the forests of our city. So idealism and making the world a better place, that can also be one way to motivate and to inspire the colleagues to do the business development activities. Okay, sorry, 1 second. And I think the last concept, because we're out of time, perhaps have a little bit of humor for yourself and for your lawyers. If you're going to be delegating something like a cross-sell meeting, on the other hand, it could seem obvious to you. You might be tempted to make the Nike mistake. You say, oh, for goodness sake, Susan, just do it and stop being a nuisance. You mustn't do that. You need to look at Susan as a good tortoise. She's very slow. It's going to take a lot of time. You're going to have to motivate her and inspire her and give her feedback and comprehension check and all of that stuff. You know, but think of her as a good tortoise. If you're a big successful partner and you've been doing this stuff for 10 to 20 years, inevitably you are going to be quicker and smarter and sharper in business development than one of the lawyers. Even if Susan is super keen, she just doesn't have the experience. It's going to take her time. So you mustn't have the same expectations on your youngsters as you would have on yourself. And we can be overambitious. We're lawyers. Of course, we're overambitious. So one way to think about this is understand that Susan is a good tortoise. She means well. It's going to take her a ridiculous amount of time to do things, and she's going to make a lot of silly mistakes, and it's going to be agonizingly slow and glacial. So that's the expectation you have. Hopefully, she's going to prove you wrong, and things will be quicker and more effective. But you need to have that tolerance and that patience. Think of her as a good tortoise. Don't unrealistically expect that people can do things as well as you can. Not as a lawyer legally, and definitely not in business development. And that'll help you to get to where you want to go. The good news is, guys, just to wrap up, that there is so much room for improvement in cross-selling. Typically, law firms are basically not doing it. And it's the same thing with delegation and sales management. Typically, law firms are not doing it. If you combine both of these together, I really believe Delegation skills, sales management, you have a huge opportunity for improving things there because you're probably not doing it. And cross-selling, one of the most massive ways that you can improve revenues with your current clients. Oh my goodness, you can have so much success